What is this? Holy cow. We got a dirty bike here. Ooh, dirty in not in a good way. Garage dust dirt. Ah, man. Garage dust dirt. That means it's not bedridden. Well, this is a Univega ModoVincere. Any case, I'm just going to butcher it. It's a Columbus tubing steel, nice bike. As you know me, if you watched any of my videos, I have a passion for steel frames, and Columbus tubing, pretty slick stuff. Any case, we're going to go through this bike, hopefully clean it up with aluminum polished fork. It's a classic 2001 Univega, and it's a 50 centimeter, which still has a little sticker on there, which helps me identify the size, which is great. We're going to do some serious cleaning, and it also has Campagnolo componentry. Yeah, we'll review and check this beautiful gem. And yeah, you would probably think you saw this on a curb at a garage sale. This is actually a diamond. Definitely a diamond in the rough. That's if everything is still functional. But in any case, we'll review after this.
Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hi, I'm Justin the Guy. Obviously I have a garage shop. Take scary out of used, one bike at a time. If you want to be kept up to date on latest projects and topics, please like and subscribe.
Hey, welcome back to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging with the guy. Hey, I'm Justin the Guy on this old bike series. This one, we have a gem. Whoo, the Univega ModoVincere. Yeah, let's talk about Univega. Let's talk about steel frames. Let's talk about aluminum forks. And let's talk about the componentry that's on this gem of a bike. Yeah, it's one of those scenarios where you'll see a bike and like, man, that's just covered with dust and dirt. It's just, you'd think like it's garbage. Well, there's a little bit about Univega. Univega, I believe it started in the 70s. They were made in Italy, manufactured in Italy. A guy in California made the company up. Univega hit the scene pretty good within the 70s and the 80s. In the 90s, it was purchased by Raleigh, which is also known to be purchased by Derby Cycles. Well, Derby Cycles did a lot of purchasing in the 90s, kind of like the Trek thing, buying a lot of different brands. They did too. I remember specifically going to a bike show in 96, 97, and lo and behold, you got a Raleigh booth, right? People know Raleigh, kind of like Schwinn, if you've been around, aged like me, vintaged. Yes, Raleigh brand, which was, we were looking at another brand at the time to bring in, and we ended up with Jameis. But in any case, Raleigh had several different cool little models and price points, and they also carried Nishiki and also Univega. Univega was purchased then by Derby Cycles. They are currently owned by Kent International. You can go under Kent International website and purchase the new versions of the Univegas, which has mostly been watered down to be your recreational bike line, like low-end mountain bikes, recreational hybrids, comfort bikes, that kind of thing. I didn't see a lot there, but Univega has been around for multiple decades. We are on the 5th decade as we're speaking. But back to this particular one in 2001. Well, what really caught my eye, being in industry for this period of time and knowing the componentry of that vintage, is the Columbus tubing, which was being used also by the Specialized frame you see in the back corner there, nice high-end steel. If you get yourself a Specialized LA with the Columbus tubing in the early 2000s, like 2004, 2005 with Ultegra componentry, a rock solid bike. What are we looking at here? Well, this Univega was made in Taiwan as well as the Specialized. Yeah, made in Taiwan, which is fine. A lot of Treks and Specializes of being made in Taiwan now. Two major manufacturers is either Giant or Merida. So it was made in one of the two. Specialized is being built in Merida, so With Columbus tubing, I'm kind of putting things together that mostly is made in Merida. Nor here nor there, where it's really made in Taiwan, but that just kind of gives you an idea that it does have the same qualities and manufacturing that was built. Looking at the frame, as in detail, it has cast lugs, so these were soldered on the back. You got a little casting here to reinforcement of the actual seat clamp, reinforcement of the head tube here where the cups go in for steel, where in traditional old steel frames were brake points. And these have a nice little diamond design in the little stamp side here with Columbus stickers. This is dirty as hell. I'm just not, it's just dirty. Dirty, 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 dirty. But on the flip side though, probably does not have the original stem. Or maybe it does. I'll have to look at spec sheets. I did find it on one of the websites out there that does bikes listings, that kind of thing. I'll have to look at the specs, kind of follow them on my phone. But it does have Campagnolo componentry, Italian. They were very competitive with the Shimanos within the late 90s, early 2000s. This is the Veloce. The Veloce is the third level down, which is, I think, record course and Veloce. Veloce is like the 105 in Shimano. So if you're very versed with Shimano componentry, that's the third level down, which means it works well. It's the working individual's componentry, right? It's usually a little more budget friendly. This bike retailed new for $1,000, which is not bad. With the Veloce was being also mixed like in the Trek line. There was a few models there. I remember that. They kind of came in and out of bike lines very, very often. Once in a while, you're like, oh, we're going to try out Campagnolo again. And then next year, nope. It's one of those components that they do a presence. Campagnolo puts a push. They get them on some big brand bikes, and then all of a sudden they have to pull back. They're still around today. You'll see them on the high-end stuff. They have electronic shifting as well, all that jazz. But back to this one, the Veloce is like the workhorse. What's also known to be really popular amongst Campagnolo componentry is it's workable in the sense that you can take it all apart, fix it, and put it all back together. I haven't worked on a lot of it over the years, so I'm not that skilled, but I know there's some shops out there. And if you're one of them, put some comments below. And it's like, hey, shout out, like, hey, I work on this stuff. It's great. Or I work on it and it's like a nightmare. Let me know. We'll find out when we dive into this bike. But I'm going to do some serious detail into it to bring out the yellow and black, classic early 2000s, late 90s look with aluminum fork, which also has its logoing. So it wasn't mixed match. So this is pretty much 98% stock. Seat, obviously not. I'll have to double check the seat post. I think the bars and stems are, and looking at how the wrapping was, it looks pretty darn original or close to it. So in any case, it looks like it. At first glance, looking at a dust ball, it looks pretty decent. In addition to, it has Mavic rims, which was the XP, or the XP21 rims, which are pretty decent, solid aero rim at the time with DT Swiss spokes, I believe. So the wheels are decent. The componentry is decent. It has a triple for climbing those monster hills. It's a 9-speed back. The only kind of catch on these you have to kind of worry about a little bit is the cassette bodies have a different key pattern than Shimano. So you're going to have specific Campy freehub bodies or designed or mock-up ones that take those cassettes. If you flipped it to a 9-speed Shimano or SRAM, probably would work, but not as clean as the Campagnoli. And you can find a plethora of used Campagnoli on eBay. So that's not going to be a deterrent. This is something that you're going to have to look into. Maybe not a huge variety, but what the heck? You're going to find some stuff out there. The Veloce 9-speed. I'm not saying that right at all. It's kind of cool. It's has a lever up, and it's kind of like the Sora of shifters design with a thumb button. I think there's a couple other brands. Microshift might have something like this too. But it has a clean ratcheting inside. What I love about Campagnoli is it's a ratcheting index for the front shifter. So it's not just 1, 2, 3 with the Shimano with a trim with half notches. And believe me, that is a nightmare to try to explain to anybody that has not used a front shifter with a double or a triple. What's trim? Well, I'll tell you, but you're not going to know until you actually ride a damn thing and go, snap, oh, I understand what trim means. Not the kind of trim that you're thinking in Las Vegas or whatever. No, no, no. Trim in the front shifter. The shifter on this is ratcheting, so it's not trim. So it's basically you adjust it up to where it's no longer rubbing the chain when you're in the different direction of chain angles with your drivetrain. Needless to say, kind of cool stuff. It's going to be kind of fun to tear it apart and look at it and clean. I had another bike that had the, not record, but had chorus on it, but one of the shifters were bad, and it was on this Copy. And I looked at the parts, and to get a new shifter for the right side was more than what I paid for the bike. So I'm like, I'm just going to disperse the parts, and somebody's going to find this frame and go, this is the frame. And I did a whole detailed job on it. You can kind of, so it's really shiny with the ceramic coating and so forth. That's what I'm going to do to this guy here. So I picked these up as a pair. I think they actually may have belonged to the same couple originally. But anywho, it's a 50 centimeter Columbus tubing, steel frame, aluminum fork, awesome workhorse componentry. It is your working person's bike. I mean, the price point on it originally was $1,000. But here's the kicker. If you saw my little blurb before, it's like for sale, $1,400. Yeah. There's some people out there that just throw prices out on the world of eBay, and there's a bigger version of this for $1,400. I'll post a picture of it here to show you. Nuts. I think it's just a reach. I'll do a little more research and see if there's a value to that. I did not pay even remotely close to that, nor should you. Any case, if you do find one of these in your neck of the woods, or with, you know, 200-300, that's if you really know what you like in steel frames and that kind of ride. As in 2024 now, our bike market is kind of hitting a low point, so still people are throwing prices out there, and I'll watch that and see if it degrades, or somebody maybe it's it's only valuable to the person that's actually buying it. Just like houses, right? And cars and other stuff and things. But yeah, I kind of jaw dropped 14. That's $400 more than it would retail for. And it didn't really have anything extra on it that would warranty the, like, wasn't upgraded to full DA or record 12-speed electronic shifting. No, it just had the same componentry as this. It was just cleaned up. I saw the same listing on Etsy as well as Craigslist. So the guy is distributing it out in all those channels and portals. It'll be interesting to see if any of those catches somebody's eye and decides to pay that absorbent amount. But in any case, I will be taking off the aero bars. This is a traditional road. The aero bars will be sold as a separate item. And I'll put more of a traditional road saddle on there. This is more of a comfort saddle, which is fine. But when I fit somebody, when I have more, or when I present this, is going to be original parts and so forth. But diving into this, chain is stretched, going to have to replace that. Everything is really dirty, so ultrasonic cleaner magic is going to happen to the drivetrain for sure, as well as the brakes and as well as the shifters. So there's going to be a lot of tear down to the frame. Clean these barrel adjusters, make sure they work well. Clean those as well. As it has different bottle cage mounts, so I'll try to get them to be matchy match. Double check that seat post, make sure it's the correct length. In addition to, it's going to work for whatever the new saddle I'm put on there. Needs new rubber. So if you're buying this and looking at it like, what am I putting into it? As a service writer, service manager, shop owner for the last 30 years, I'm going to tell you the bike shop tune-up is going to cost you, pretty much any of your shops are going to go, whoa, well, you're looking at, you know, how they go. But a tune-up for my shop is about $150 to $200 to do the labor for the cables and housing and drivetrain clean. Some more realistic shops in your neck of woods could be up to $250 to $300, all depending what they're into doing. So for me, it's going to be about like 150 a chain, let's say 25 bucks. Cables and housing kit, it's going to be another 25. So you're looking at least 200. New rubber, 250. I'm adding right. Bar tape, and then some other pedals and a new seat, and you're looking at 350 in. Worst case scenario, around 400-ish. Maybe a little bit more if I have to repack the hubs or the headset. But in that case, if everything works together and comes together nicely, it's going to be one stellar bike. I mean, it's going to have all new rubber, new bar tape, cables and housing. It's going to shift crisp. It's going to be clean with a new chain, with a polished frame, which is very important with steel frames. You want to make sure they're clean. Also, I'm going to do a ceramic coating on top of it. So if there's any chips that have gotten down to the steel, it'll actually layer of protection there to prevent that water from beating into underneath the paint. And also grease points for sure, making sure they're good. Here in Colorado, in the States, it's pretty arid. We're a mile high, very dry. Usually I don't have to worry about rust on steel frames, but if you're like in the Midwest or on a coastal city where humidity is a high level of it, you'll need to do extra stuff to the steel frames. There's a thing called frame saver. It's nasty to do, but it does save the frame. So this stuff right here, it's basically like a layering Bondo coating, and to do that, you got to strip the frame completely, the headset, the bottom bracket, the seat post, everything just for the frame. And then you plug in the paper towels, like the bottom bracket and the headset and the port, and you just spray all the vent ports inside with it usually comes with the applicator, and you spray the inside really good and you coat it just like your tubeless, but you're basically trying to get that liquid to coat through the whole frame, and it's really sticky afterwards, like it sticks up and leaves a coating. And basically you're trying to paint the inside of your frame with this stuff. Well, that will work, but you have to be mindful of it. I did it on my pop rod when I was in Michigan, and apparently I didn't let it dry long enough. And when I put the seat post in there, I thought it was fine. And when I needed to take the seat post out to move back to Colorado, it did not move. So it was seized in there. I had to do some extra elbow leveraging to finally get to break free, which I did, but mindful. It is nasty. There's shops that will do this treatment and they charge a pretty hefty price to it, and there's a reason for it. Just saying. There's a reason for it, and you can do it yourself. Heaven, more power to you. But in any case, it's one of those things that will save the frame. That's why I do the external with the ceramic coating, which is a little bit easier to do. Could you do ceramic coating inside? Probably a little bit easier, but hey, I ain't gonna go there. Aluminum fork, it's a little more rigid, but I'm gonna still do the polishing on it with hopefully that aluminum has a little bit of a clear coat on it like they did with the older Specializes. But in any case, pretty cool stuff. I mean, looking at the bike, it has been used to some level, obviously enough to wear the chain, but at the end of the day, if you got this for what I paid for it, and yeah, you're looking at still about 7-6-ish time you're all done, maybe even 5 if some of the parts you may have yourself or find a deal on componentry and so forth, or as in like cables and tires and that kind of stuff. That's just kind of the higher estimate. Yeah, like 150. And if you do some of the, if you do some of the work yourself, which I do implore you to do, because when you do like little jobs like fixing a flat, adjusting the hubs, adjusting derailleurs, those kinds of things, even if you fail, you still learn something. And even if you have to take it to the shop, you still learn something, and then you can get a expert opinion, hopefully from a bike mechanic or an owner or shop or whatever. Oh, this is what you need to do, and get redirected. Then you know what to do. It is a learning thing, and riding bikes is. I've always been an advocate of somebody learning to know how to work on their bike to some level, because when you're out there, you can be out there pretty far, especially mountain biking. You can be in the woods pretty deep, and if you have something that goes wrong, if you have some of the tools, just minor shop, like trail tools, and to be able to fix it to the point to get back, that's like kind of, like the survival story, right? So I'm all for people working on their stuff, bringing in parts like, hey, does this work with this? Yeah, no, maybe otherwise. We'll figure it out together. I'll go with you on this journey. Bike shops should have that kind of warm hug when you bring in bikes to be worked on. So in any case, with this one is actually the one I did purchase to resell a little while ago. I'm just now getting around to it. So the garage dust is not necessarily all theirs, but my shop's pretty clean in a sense that this stuff has been at least 10 years. At least. Anyway, let's crack into this and see how weird to get. Weird, dirty, weird, dirty. I don't know. Just need more water. Maybe it is worth $1,400. No, I doubt it. It's one of those things. If it could, you know, it's the right buyer. Sentimental. I mean, if I find like a 1 out of 100 or whatever built, yeah, in any case. So yeah, oh, he has a Campagnolo front hub, Campagnolo rear. Sometimes these get a little chunky, so this one is chunky, so I will have to overhaul the front to make sure it's smooth. Back in the day, they made good stuff. Campy is really known for really good stuff. I mean, it's pretty neat. But on the flip side, though, my experience is it works well until it doesn't, and when it doesn't, then you're looking at a mess of a situation. But that's all my perspective, right? Because, you know, if you had a shop and you were working on these Campagnoli like most of the time, you probably know all the in and outs like I do with Shimano. So, you know, to each. It has a lot of the similar componentry tools. I know the lock rings are a little bit different on Campy, which I do have a lock ring removal. It's not your standard Shimano one. If this has, if I'm lucky, it's going to have the Campagnolo. Yeah, they put details on these, like they'll have Campagnolo on the skewer. Kind of cool. Get that back in there. Set. I better find those for those, but wheel set. Yeah. And this one's a little smoother. They also have a little bulge here on the rear wheel, which is kind of cool. That's where the free hub body fits into. And this is those stamps, or the coil forge dropouts. These were made separately, then they're put in, and they're soldered together there. Then you have weld beads in the bottom bracket area, brake arch here, and various other pieces. So it's kind of a mixed art of installing this guy. Okay, looking at this guy, I have the freewheel tool removal. This one was actually from Parks, old school. I doubt if they'll have them still available, but I'll put the part number underneath. And old school crescent wrench. Okay, that one wasn't too tight, thank goodness. Sometimes these get on there and you worry about damaging the lock ring. So, note to self of Campagnoli chain rings or cassette bodies. These are quirky. Reason being is they're keyed. Also, they have special spacers between them. Two different types. So, it is a very good idea to keep that spacing together from the get-go. So I take a zip tie and I slide this out. I put it through the cassette. So when this gets cleaned, these spacers, I don't have to look up on the internet and figure out what spacer A, B, and C, and D go to. It's already going to be spaced, and I can still get this really clean. Prior to that, same thing is that one, where I did have another one floating around here somewhere. Any case, and this is, you know, it's cool. They use the alloy, and they use a deep groove for their cassettes. And this is what the newer ones, the new Shimano 11-speed, so they eventually copied the idea. See how deep that is? Reason being is those steel chain cogs will cut into the alloy freehub bodies. So with the shallower flush on the Shimano ones, it sometimes would cut through. On these, it's pretty deep, so they don't. And since this, it's like, this will break. These are like dork plates, so most people take those off initially. When they get to this age, they're more of a hazard. Reason being, they just do that. If it gets caught up and broken, it'll shatter inside your actual drivetrain, and that can cause you to crash. So, best to get that off. Oh yeah, that's not a lock. Is it? Yeah, I'll do some cleaning up on this, get it really good and sharp. But other than that, it still looks like in really good shape. Maybe a little just, yeah, some good cleaning for sure. So yeah, we're gonna cut these cables, pop all the parts off, give it a good ultrasonic cleaning, rip the tape off. This is definitely going to be a 2-day project. It's later in the day for me today, so I'm just going to focus on getting it stripped and going from there. Oh yeah, I need to take that chain off. Doubt if it has a power link this age, so in that case you just push the pin through with the chain tool. And that in mind, be careful if on these older ones you have a hard time pushing that pin through, you can put a little drop of oil on there. That might help open that up to make it push through. This is, you know, your shop tool, chain tool, which is a little more beefier. I do keep the chain to compare to the new one for length, so this one will be set aside. And then this allows me to dive into these bits. Do a couple reviews on what I find here. Yeah, housing's not too contaminated, so garage wear, garage dust. Really, just that's what it is. So this has the old school smaller jockey pulleys on here. It's definitely caked up, and scrape that off with a screwdriver. Do some serious cleaning. Just have a fun little adjustment here to adjust the V-spring kind of tension on there. This one looks like it's pretty good intact, and the barrel adjuster is still there, pretty good. No really very much surface rust. Get that cleaned up. It's the old school fuel pin on that. Ben Cycles, I've seen on his videos, does a pretty good job of cleaning up parts like this. Use ultrasonic cleaner, block burn, every that. It's like pretty cool. Check out some of this stuff. It just kind of reminds me of working on this here. Alright, front derailleur. Now, older parts like this, you want to kind of be a little gentle. Because you don't want to cross or strip any bolts out. Sometimes age, even with these new, sometimes we're really dainty. So make sure that same kind of detail, even on the Veloce model, which is the 3rd level down, has all these little intricate details of how they were built. Pretty cool stuff. I mean, and it has, oh yeah, a nice little Campagnolo stamp front derailleur. You'll see it on the cranks too. Sometimes. This one looks like it's kind of worn off a little bit. The brakes were pretty decent. They were just as comparable as the Shimano calipers. So, Campagnolo also had a crazy high-end one. It looked like a big old brick of aluminum up front. And those were pretty neat. So, but you know, same kind of standard length. I mean, the frame is nothing unique to Campy, so if you want to switch everything out to Shimano, you can, or even SRAM with today's stuff. So basically, that's what we're looking at. You know, brake pads actually pretty decent. Oh yeah, these barrel adjusters, they do slide out, so keep mindful of that. They are keyed, so they sit in there like so when you're washing all those bits up. And onto the crank arms. This one will have, I don't think it will have a spline or self-extracting crank. It's just bolt, cap, and then you'll need to do a use a crank arm removal tool, which will give you a good picture of doing. This is kind of tight. Oh, they use blue Loctite on the crank bolts. Campagnolo, so give that. And also, there's always a usually a spacer in there, washer. Make sure you get that washer out before you use that crank puller. Use that crank puller on top of that. You're smashing up against that. This is square taper, and square taper is the narrower one of these. And you want to make sure you thread this into the crank. You want it to be smooth threading. The reason being is you don't want to cross thread, because you're dealing with a steel tool with aluminum threads and aluminum crank, and this gets boogered up, which might have to do a little bit. And this is where you get the hacking knife and you cut the aluminum so it has a good bite to the first thread. Yeah, I might have to resume on this. I'm not going to force it. Clean those threads. I can see them kind of smushed down already, so we'll do a little focus on that, and we'll recap after that. And here we go. Oh. Cable out, and it's always good, especially with bikes this old, to replace the cables in the housing, especially if it's used, you don't know where it came from. It's just going to give all the componentry the ability to work at its best performance without any restrictions of gummed up, aged out housing and cables. And it's not very expensive to lift to do to get the higher performance. Also, note this internal cable routing on the shifters as well as the brakes. Beat the Shimano, because they did that eventually, but they did it beforehand several years. So Campagnolo is always like that brand. It was like a little ahead, but you know, it's kind of like one of those things where execution was slow, or Shimano was slow for execution, but Campagnolo had the ideas, implemented it, but Shimano would eventually perfect it. So the Italian, Japanese controversy continues. So, well, I'm at a point now. I'm going to focus on this and put on some tunes, crank on some parts. We'll review the componentry, how it cleaned up, and we'll go over recap that, and also I'll recap the crank set on this, and also the detailing of the frame. See how clean I got it. But at this point, I got my work ahead of me, and I might be in a different t-shirt, so it might be a different day. In any case, thanks for hanging out with me so far. Let's check out these parts right after this. All right, just worked on the wheels. I've been using this ceramic spray wax on the rims and some parts. It seems to be working pretty good. I mean, found it at Walmart, or you can get it on Amazon with HyperClean to lithium to clean off the surface areas for a good connection. But whoa, what happened here? Chain rings had to be taken apart due to the fact they were so gunky I couldn't get to all the bits and bolts. So same thing, well, got the cassette all clean. That took a lot of scrubbing, and bam, got clean brakes, derailleur, rear derailleur. Look at that, how immaculately clean compared to what it was. And I got shifters, they've been cleaned up, the veloce, and also been lubed. There's the crank set that needs to be reassembled, and yes, I did some frame polishing and detailing using the ceramic slam on the frame to do some added protection. And there's the weight, there's the front wheel. It's all true and clean. I overhauled the front hub too. You see that layer of grease there? Basically I replaced the bearings in it, and now it's super smooth. But Why is the rear wheel still in the truing stand? Well, when I went to true this, it basically had a really loose spoke, and when truing it, the tensions are really off. In other words, the rim is bent. And when the rim is bent, you can try to true it to some level, but if it gets too bent, you get high and low tensions on spokes where it's not going to hold that true, and it will just basically revert to being wiggle wobbly. If this is a disc wheel, it won't be too terrible. You can work with it, but since this is the braking surface, you can't compromise the braking surface. So there's a couple of these non-drive spokes where super loose, i.e. in other words, the rim's toast, the rear wheel's toast, unless I can find a rim to relace in that. That is time and money, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately. But let's review the frame. Let's check this bad boy out. Whoa, look how clean that turned out. With that ceramic coating, you see a haze on that. Well, let's just knock this down by using a fiberglass. See how instantly that just turns to gloss. There's a tug at first, but after a couple swipes, it becomes super smooth. This will protect that steel frame from rusting and the coloring of the paint from fading. And in addition to water beads up, water protection, and it sheds contaminants and water easily. So this protects the frame from just UV and contaminants. Also gives it one hell of a shine. Check that out. Even did aluminum fork blades. Look how polished that is. Super shiny. You can use this also on other bits. I did like the stem and bars here, just give it a little extra cleaning looking. And over the caps of the, wow, super, wow. Actually turned out really nice. Well, let's review. What am I going to have to do fix this or not? So here's my scenario. Got a bum part, a big one too. Wheel sets are a third of your bike. Granted, only the rear. I'm a matchy-matchy person, so I'm not just going to throw a rando rear wheel. Also, it's campy, so I just don't have these rolling around as much. But although, in a weird universe, cosmic way, I still have a wheel set from another bike that I took apart that has a campy wheel set with Open Pro rims. Should I put this on this bike and finish the build? Or should I just part it out? Well, let's look at dollars and cents to this. Unfortunately, the bike market on prices on bikes have dropped drastically. Well, that means you have to be very mindful what you're purchasing, in addition to refurbishing and putting the time and labor, which I put a lot of time and labor already in this bike. I'd say I'm already 5 hours into this. Yeah, 5 hours divided by whatever little profit, yeah, below minimum wage. So, thinking about it, this particular bike, yeah, I know it said $1,400 online. No, it's not going to sell for that. If lucky, altogether, I'd be lucky to sell it because Univega is not a big, strong name out there anymore. Therefore, it might only sell for around about $500 if I'm lucky for a steel frame. Because carbon bikes and titanium bikes are on the used market for that. So how do I justify that? Well, if somebody sees the value of me tuning it up, sure, that's great, but that's a pretty big risk. So, well, this is what the option is. I put it together with $100 worth of parts, with another $100 worth of wheel set designated value, and my time, well, you're talking that I'm gonna have to sell this bike about $600 to $700 to make a profit. Not good. So, looking at the bike, the frame, the wheel, front wheel I can still sell. So the frame, I might be able to get 150 to 200 out of it if I'm lucky, maybe 100. The parts itself, you know, the derailleurs and the brakes, you can probably get yourself another 100 out of that. The shifters, probably 100 because they have a good following. A crankset, all cleaned up and good chain rings for a 9-speed. Maybe $50, somewhere around there. So all said and done, I'll recover my costs that I have into the bike with the parts and everything, if I'm lucky, it'll total up to about 400. Well, that'll cover my labor-ish, making basically, I would say $15 an hour, which is not great. But in any case, that's what you're looking at when you're refurbishing bikes. This one I did purchase myself to refurbish. When I come across a boo-boo like this, kind of the same scenario with a Kopi. The shifter on the right side was way too more expensive to replace. I could replace it and put it together, but I would have to absorb that cost into the bike just to break even. Unfortunately, I'm not going to take a loss. I'm just going to break even by basically listing and selling the parts. That's a good chance, but I'm going to research it, see what the parts go for. If they're really low, they're not actually selling out there, I might just go ahead and put it together and go from there. The rear wheel, what you can do about that is I could find a rim or a wheel that has a rim that's still good and steal it and swap it over. Well, to relace or swap a rim over, that's another hour of my time. So when you're looking at equation, hour here, hour there, hour here, hour there, does it become really worth it? Yeah, granted, I'm not in this for the money, obviously, but so at some point, though, I still need to pay myself back for what I'm putting into it. Therefore, you know, I'm not making millions, but I gotta still make sure I pay myself. Well, conundrum. Yeah, pickle here. Well, we'll see what they come up with. If not, you'll either see a full bike here, listed in the pictures, the beautiful and all that, or you're going to find assortment of parts that I've polished and listed after that. But in any case, yeah, this one I would say was a dinger because what I paid for it and what I needed to put it into it. If it is yourself and you put in a 200 to 250, maybe 300 bucks into the bike, and you're looking at all in between 500 to 600, it's still a pretty good bike under 1,000. Are you going to get that out of it if you need to decide not to riding or any of that? No, you're going to have to take a loss on it. Therefore, there's a lot of people out there looking for Veloce brake sets. People out there looking for Veloce rear derailleurs. Campagnolo has a pretty good following. These turned out really clean. So, needless to say, I've sold the parts off of a good portion of the parts off the other bike. I know I can probably recoup some of my costs on this. And it did come with those profile bars. I'll probably make 30 or 40 bucks off of that to help offset. Therefore, it'll be pretty much a wash, not a big profit maker, which kind of took a gamble on this anyway. Didn't think I would anyway, but in any case, here we're at. Well, check out either this beautiful bike or beautiful parts. Either way, thanks for hanging out with me in the garage with me today. If it's nice in your neck of woods, please go for a ride. If you have a bike like this or scenarios that you came across like this scenario here, please put it in the comments below. It's a community here. Please contribute if you would like. Other descriptions and so forth are in the other information descriptions are below as well. And again, have a wonderful day, and thanks for hanging out with me in the garage. Until next time, have a wonderful day.